Obi, I'm going to quote one of your favorite musicians and songs of all time,
Okay.
Paula Abdul. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, basically is what she's talked about. That's kind of what it felt like for the A&M football season, and the step back felt like a huge step back with November because you thought they figured out that winning DNA, and instead what you got the last month of the season against, Power 4 opponents was a losing DNA at the end of games.
Yeah, well, look, I don't know the song, but I know what you're talking about as far as taking
You're a big
2
Paula
steps
Abdul
back.
fan.
No? But, that season they went from showing, DNA to DOA. It was just so – that was such a disgusting defensive performance. They couldn't cover, and they seemed, in the secondary at least, almost bothered by the concept of having to make a tackle.
Yeah. You showed me a couple plays. I'm like,
I saw somewhere, I don't have the exact number, but it was something like USC had something like 170 yards after catch. That's disgraceful.
That is disgraceful.
So something has to change in the defense, in the defensive secondary. I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's coaches. But that can't happen to a team that, look, they had some nice receivers, but let's be honest, again, they were without 3 of their top receivers.
Yep.
And this guy, who's a good quarterback, we knew coming in that even though he'd only been had only been the starter for the previous 3 games, he had a history of playing well, but A&M made him look like a Heisman Trophy contender.
Again, OB, we tried to warn people. Whatever the narratives are, for some reason A&M will fall short when it comes to those. I did talk to a couple of insiders of USC over the weekend. They're like, we lost 3 of our top 5 receivers, but make no mistake about it, our 2 top receivers were there. And you saw them just torch the A&M secondary. We were not only told, we know the fact that the offensive line was missing some dudes. Mm-hmm. How many sacks did A&M have?
1.
1 sack. So defense, and to be honest with you, I would say not all season, because there was a stretch where you could not run on the A&M defense, right? Or successfully, like top. But once that LSU game happened, people figured out how to run on A&M, and they ran on them, and they ran on them, and ran on them. And I know USC only had 100 and whatever yards rushing, but when they needed to get some yards on the ground, they did, and they certainly got it in the air. Just kind of you sum up the season for us, and what you think the direction of the program feels like to you today.
Man, that was a great question that you asked me. I sat there thinking about it all night. Really not all night. Actually, since the bowl game loss, what is the direction of this team? And my sentiments are still the same. I'm still very optimistic about where we're going. Like I said, as long as it's a saying that goes, as long as you got some motion, it's better than no motion. And the motion that we do have is Elko came in for a no-name hit and I really want to stop doing him a disservice and saying a no-name head coach. I would say he wasn't the biggest name that was out there and the candidate that everybody wanted, but he was the candidate that got it done. We had improvement from what we had last year, which is all that we can ask for. But also with that, with him coming in hot, I think a lot of people that are never going to be happy, those guys are still going to be unhappy because we did start off exceptionally well. Number 1 for a majority of the season, getting the ball rolling, and then to do what we typically have done in years prior within this last decade, which has been the story of our program, is we start off hot, but we can never finish. And so with us kind of showing those tendencies, it's kind of like PTSD. You've seen a couple flashes of the old signs of us not being able to finish and build off of that momentum, and then people want to get upset, but I encourage people not to get upset. Trust Elko. Like I said, in Elko we trust. He brought in some great guys from the portal, and if he can build off of this momentum from where he started it and learn from the life lessons that they had this past season, I think the future is very bright for Texas A&M football.
The SEC overall, this is the most loaded I've ever seen it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of study. After Houston Christian, I knew we were playing ACU, but I had a little bit more time to diagnose what we had done. But the reason I wanted to better understand what we had done, to be honest, was to have some level of context on where we're going. And not really for me to explain all of the specifics to the team, but, you get, like everyone, you get so consumed in your own world, in your own schedule, in your own preparation that you don't have as much time as I think an outsider would think on, hey, did you see what happened with XYZ? And I'm like, oh, no, I had no idea. You're so focused because that's what's required of what we've done. And statistically speaking, there for a while, it looked like it was going to be the 2004 ACC that would be slightly ahead numerically of this year's SEC in college basketball history. And that was about 3 weeks ago. And now it's unquestionably through the first 9 weeks of the season, it's the best conference, non-conference that any conference has ever had. And I was studying some of that before Christmas. I mean, right now, every game is going to be a quad one, except one. But the one that's not quad one, because of who we're about to play and who they're about to play, every game is going to be a quad one. And that's remarkable. And all coaches are going to talk about it's the best league. But even if you remove the opinion and you just look at the data, I mean, 3 of those teams haven't even lost a game. And depending upon which metric you look at, I mean, 9 or 10 of those teams are in the top 25.
But that doesn't mean that, A, throw the whole thing in the dumpster. It doesn't mean, B, no one can have any level of optimism moving forward. Because I'm going to tell you this. Every single one of those guys that came back, and you can say NIL, because there's a reality now, and they come back and they tend to make more money in NIL and they stay. Mm-hmm. Almost every kid coming back on this team that doesn't go in the portal, and this is all college football. Any player anywhere, Oregon right now in the playoff, Ohio State, anywhere, can go in the portal and make more money than they're going to make on their current team. Like Texas, they've got it rolling there. Any player can go into Sark's office, and there will come a point where they are asking for too much money. And Texas, even in the playoff run, played for the SEC title in year 1, have all the money in the world in NIL. They would sit back, you would walk out of the office, and they would have a conversation. Should we keep him? Because he's asking for this. And if the answer is no, they're going to let that player go and say, no, this is fair. This is your value. This is what we're offering you. And if they leave, they're probably going to get paid more than they would have got to stay at Texas. So every player everywhere can do that. So these guys that are staying, they're staying not because of money. Again, like I said, they can get paid anywhere. They're staying because they have optimism in where it's headed. And they're in the building every day, and they understand what it was now versus what it was this year, right?
Yeah.
The recruits that signed clearly have optimism. They could have gone anywhere else. These portal additions, the Hudson, the Craver, the Concepcion, they have optimism. It doesn't mean it's going to be right. I understand it. You don't have to follow that up. Let's act like human beings here. I know that it's not a guarantee that this passing game is going to just explode. Marcel has to continue to develop, which, by the way, I thought he played. I went back and rewatched the game. I think he played it a lot better. He's obviously got a ways to go. He's a freshman. But there's no guarantee of that. There's no guarantee that Klein, is he a 10 as an offensive coordinator, is he a 2? You don't know that yet. There's no guarantee. I get it. But these receivers had a lot of confidence in this passing game moving forward. They had a lot of confidence in this quarterback. So it's not unacceptable to sit here and talk about the future even 2 days or even a day after and go, okay, that you can do both. You can say that sucked. That wasn't good. That was inexcusable. And then you can also say, but the year as a whole wasn't a disaster. It was actually a solid first season. And then you can look in the future and go, I've still got reasons to be optimistic. And I could see this team making a big jump next year. My message and my thoughts a few days later is it's not guaranteed. What concerns me is the schedule versus year two. Year two to me is always it's the hardest one because you still aren't going to have things exactly as you want them. But the expectation, as it should be, is to make a jump. Now, I don't know, maybe losing to USC and Auburn has created the window to make a jump now because you weren't 10-2, you went 8-5. Now there is, but I think this team needs to figure out a way next year to get out there and win 9 games. And I'm not saying that's, the desire, but I'm saying like, hey, you need to go 9-3, go win a bowl game, be 10-3 in year two. And you look at that schedule and you go, man, that's gonna be hard to do. But that's the job. That's all this money being spent in the portal. That's, that it is what it is. NIL, the whole roster, like you're up there. You're not at the top, but you're up there. And the expectation is that you make a jump. And again, it doesn't have to be, I want to see it in the playoff, but you just need to see a significant jump in year two against what I think is going to be a much harder schedule.